My name is Lauren, and I am 26 years old. They say that the clothes we wear tell the world who we are before we even open our mouths to speak. If that's true, then 3 weeks ago my mother handed me a costume designed to tell the world I was a failure. She stood in our kitchen, the light hitting the linoleum in that harsh, unforgiving way it always does in that house, and she handed me a garment bag. Inside was a crumpled charcoal suit, 2 sizes too big, smelling of mothballs and the stagnant air of a basement closet. She didn't look me in the eye when she gave it to me. She just said, "You don't deserve anything new, Lauren. You're lucky we even let you live under this roof." Standing right behind her was my sister Brittany. Brittany is 30, and in our family's eyes, she is the sun around which all planets revolve. That day, she was wearing a brand new designer outfit, crisp, cream-colored, tailored to the millimeter. She had her arms crossed, watching me with that specific smile she's worn since we were children. It's the smile of someone who has already won a race before it even started. And Brittany was always winning. She had the new car. She had the paid-off apartment. She had the elite connections that only the right parents and the right amount of money can buy. I was the hand-me-down daughter. I was the daily reminder of what happened when you didn't live up to your potential. I was the family's burden. But here is the thing about being pushed into a corner. Eventually, you start to look for the exit. What neither my mother nor my sister saw coming was where I was going in that suit. I wasn't just going to a job interview. I was walking into the most important room of my life, at the exact creative agency where Brittany worked. I would be 3 floors directly above the desk, where she had spent years building her perfect reputation. And when the woman who ran that company, Donna Hale, took one look at me in that pinned-together disaster of a suit, she didn't laugh. She stood up, walked around her mahogany desk, and draped her own tailored blazer over my shoulders. She looked me in the eye and said, with a voice as cold and certain as winter stone, "I know exactly who put you in that suit." She wasn't guessing. She wasn't being kind. She knew, and that single moment was the beginning of the end for the lies my family had used to keep me small. Let's go back, because the beginning matters. If you don't understand the foundation of a house, you'll never understand why the walls finally cracked. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. To a stranger driving by, we were the definition of stability. My father had worked union electrical jobs for 30 years, hard, honest work that paid well. My mother managed the front desk at a local dental office. They owned their house outright. They had 2 cars in the driveway and a backyard fence they repainted every few years like clockwork. From the outside, there was always enough. But inside those 4 walls, there was a different economy. There was enough for Brittany, and there was never enough for me. Growing up, if you had asked me how our family was doing, I would have told you we were struggling to survive. Why? Because that is the narrative my parents fed me every single time I needed something. When I needed new shoes for the school year because mine were falling apart, my mother would sigh as if I were asking for a trip to the moon. "We can't afford that right now, Lauren. You'll have to make do." When I needed a graphing calculator for AP Math, a tool required for me to even pass the class, it was, "Your sister's old one from 5 years ago still works fine." It didn't matter that the screen was cracked or the buttons stuck. It was good enough for me. When college came around, the disparity became a canyon. Brittany was sent to a prestigious 4-year university. My parents bought her a brand new MacBook Pro, paid for her housing, and made sure she never had to work a day so she could focus on her studies. When it was my turn, the bank account was suddenly dry. They told me community college was all they could manage. I didn't complain. I worked 2 part-time jobs, I studied until my eyes burned, and I used Brittany's old, discarded laptop, the one they had replaced for her. But the real sting came the year after Brittany moved out. That same semester, while I was scraping together change for textbooks, my parents spent $30,000 renovating Brittany's old bedroom into a guest suite. New hardwood floors, designer lighting, and a sliding glass door that led to the garden. When I asked why they had money for renovations but not for my education, my mother looked at me with a face of pure marble and said, "We just don't have it, Lauren. You know that." The thing about growing up as the lesser daughter is that you don't just receive less. You are told in 1,000 subtle and overt ways that you deserve less. And if you hear it long enough, you stop questioning the person saying it and you start questioning yourself. You build a life based on the crumbs that fall off the table after everyone else has finished eating. I became a freelance graphic designer. I couldn't afford a high-end setup, so I worked off a cracked iPad Pro. I taught myself everything: color theory, typography, brand identity, visual systems by watching free YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning after my shift at a local cafe. I knew my work was good. I had a portfolio that could compete with some of the best designers in the city. But every time I thought about applying for a permanent position at a real agency, I would hear Brittany's voice. She was the architect of my self-doubt. 2 years ago at Thanksgiving, in front of our entire family, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You're talented, Lauren, but let's be real. You don't have the discipline for full-time corporate work. I'm just being honest with you." My mother had nodded in agreement, as if Brittany were reciting a law of physics. So I stayed freelance. I stayed small. I stayed exactly where they had spent 26 years carefully placing me. That changed 5 weeks ago. I was scrolling through job boards when I saw a listing for a junior designer position at Ridgewell Creative. It's one of the top 3 agencies in the Pacific Northwest. The job description reads like a list of my specific strengths. I stared at the screen for 2 hours, my heart hammering against my ribs, before I finally hit submit. 3 days later, I received an interview confirmation. I should have been thrilled, but instead, I felt a deep, sinking dread. I knew what the next step required. I would have to tell my parents. I would have to ask for help. Sunday dinner at my parents' house is a ritual that never changes. My mother sits at the head of the table, the commander-in-chief of our family's social dynamics. My father sits at the far end, usually quiet, his eyes fixed on his plate. I sit in the middle, close enough to be useful for passing dishes, but far enough away to be invisible. I waited until the main course was served before I spoke. "I got an interview," I said, "at a design agency, Ridgewell." My mother didn't even look up. "That's nice, honey. Oh, did I tell you Brittany just got another raise? Her third one in 2 years. Her boss says she's the backbone of the strategy team." I watched her redirect the conversation like she was switching lanes on a highway. My life wasn't a destination. It was a distraction. "I need a suit," I said, my voice firmer this time. "Something professional. This is a big deal." My mother set her fork down slowly. This was a bad sign. "Lauren, do you have any idea how much we spent getting you through school?" It was a lie. I had paid for half of community college myself. But she said it with such conviction that for a second, I almost believed her. "Your sister has a suit," she continued. "A perfectly good one. You can wear that." "Mom, Brittany is 4 inches taller than me, and that suit is years old. It won't fit." My mother's eyes sharpened. "Then make it work, Lauren. You don't deserve new things. Not until you've proven you can keep a job for more than 6 months." That sentence hit me like a physical blow. It landed in the soft place in my chest that had been bruised since I was a little girl. I didn't argue. I couldn't. That night, she handed me the garment bag. It was the cheap, crinkly plastic kind. Inside was a charcoal wool suit that looked like it had survived a war and lost. The night before the interview, I stood in my bathroom. It's a small space with cracked linoleum and a light fixture that hums and flickers whenever it rains. I put on the suit. It was a disaster. The shoulders hung off me like a child wearing their father's clothes. The waist of the trousers was so wide they nearly fell to my ankles. The fabric was heavy, dated, and stiff. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt a wave of humiliation so strong I almost took it off and threw it in the trash. I almost called and canceled the interview. They're right, I thought. I look exactly like what they think I am. A mess. But then I looked at my cracked iPad propped up on the sink. I scrolled through my portfolio. 16 major projects. 3 full corporate rebrands. A nonprofit campaign that had increased donations by 40%. My work was better than good. My work was elite. And if this agency was going to judge me by the clothes my mother forced me to wear instead of the brilliance of my designs, then they didn't deserve me. I got out a box of safety pins. I began to pin the suit together, piece by piece. I pinned the waist so the pants stayed up. I pinned the hem of the trousers where they dragged on the floor. I folded the cuffs of the jacket and pinned those too. 7 safety pins total. I counted them like a mantra. I stood there, held together by metal and stubbornness, and I decided that I was going to that interview. I was going to walk through those glass doors, and I was going to let my work speak for itself. The morning of the interview, I didn't wear the suit on the bus. I didn't want the stares of the commuters. I carried it in the plastic bag and changed in the lobby restroom of the Ridgewell building. Standing in the stall, I straightened the jacket and checked my pins one last time. That's when I saw it. Tucked inside the collar, stitched in faded, yellowing thread, were 2 initials. Not BM. Not Brittany Mataff. Tammy Mataff. My mother. This wasn't Brittany's old suit. It was my mother's suit from the early 90s. It was a 30-year-old relic. Brittany had never worn this. My mother had looked me in the eye and told me it was my sister's, reinforcing the idea that I was only worthy of Brittany's leftovers. But it was a lie, a calculated, unnecessary lie designed to make me feel small. I adjusted the pins, my jaw set. I walked out of the restroom into the lobby and pressed the button for the 6th floor. The interview panel consisted of 3 people. 2 mid-level creative directors sat on the ends, but it was the woman in the center who commanded the room. Donna Hale. She had silver-streaked hair, a navy blazer that cost more than my car, and eyes that felt like they were scanning my soul. When I walked in, her eyes didn't go to my face. They went to my shoulders. They saw the way the fabric bunched. They saw the safety pin catching the overhead fluorescent light on my left cuff. Her expression changed. It wasn't a pity. It was a sharp, piercing recognition. She looked down at a tablet on the desk, tapped a few things, and then looked back at me. She stood up. The room went silent. She walked around the table, removed her own blazer, and held it out to me. "Wear this," she said, "and sit down." I put it on. It fit perfectly. The interview lasted 45 minutes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't Lauren the burden. I was Lauren the designer. We talked about typography. We talked about emotional resonance in branding. I was on fire. At the end of the session, the 2 directors left the room. Donna stayed. She leaned across the table and said very quietly, "I know exactly who put you in that suit." I assumed she meant my family in general, that she saw a young woman struggling and understood the archetype of a difficult household. But there was something in the way she said it. Who? Singular. Specific. Not what kind of people, but who. As if she already had a name in her head. "Keep the blazer for now," she said. "Wear it home. I want you to have it until you come back." I shook her hand and walked out, feeling like I was floating. But that feeling didn't last long. That evening, Brittany called. Her voice had that specific high-pitched cheerfulness she uses when she wants to extract information. "Hey, how did the interview go?" she asked. "Good," I said. "I think it went really well." "Where was it again?" she asked. She had asked me this a week ago. I had told her then. "Ridgewell Creative," I said. There was silence on the other end of the line. It wasn't a short silence. It was exactly 2 seconds. The precise amount of time it takes for a person to process a piece of information they already knew but didn't want to hear. "Oh, cool," she said, her voice dropping an octave. "Good luck with that." She hung up. I sat on my bed, the navy blazer draped over my chair, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Portland weather. Something was wrong. 4 days later, I was in a coffee shop on Hawthorne when I ran into Megan Sawyer. We had been in the same design program at community college. We weren't best friends, but we had always been friendly. We sat down to catch up. She asked if I was still freelancing, and I told her about the interview at Ridgewell. "Oh, that's awesome," Megan said. "It must be cool to finally work with your sister." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. "Brittany," Megan said like it was common knowledge. "She's a senior brand strategist at Ridgewell. She's been there for 4 years. She's like the star of the 3rd floor." I felt the blood drain from my face. Brittany had never told me the name of her agency. Every time I asked, she'd give a vague answer about a firm downtown. She had been working 3 floors below where I had just interviewed. I went home and immediately went to the Ridgewell website. I scrolled through the team page until I found her. Brittany Mataff. I clicked on her bio, and what I read made my stomach turn. Brittany Mataff grew up in a household where resources were scarce. She learned early on that creativity was her only tool for survival. She put herself through community college while working 2 part-time jobs to support her family. She wore hand-me-downs and shared a room with her sister until she was 18. For Brittany, design isn't just a career, it's the story of her resilience. I stopped breathing. Community college? That was me. Working part-time to support the family? That was me. Hand-me-downs? I was literally looking at the suit that proved it. Brittany had never gone to community college. She had never worked a day in her life until after her 4-year degree was paid for. She had never shared a room past the age of 10. She hadn't just exaggerated her life, she had stolen mine. She had taken my struggle, my pain, and my history, and she had sold it to Donna Hale as her brand. She was wearing my life like a costume, and she was being promoted for it. I sat in the dark of my apartment and screenshotted every word of that bio. I saved them in a folder on my desktop labeled Proof. My hands were shaking, not with sadness, but with a cold, terrifying clarity. My mother called 10 minutes later. Her voice was lighter than usual. "Lauren, honey, Brittany mentioned that those big agencies are very competitive. Don't be too disappointed if you don't hear back. You know, you've always been better at freelance stuff. It's more your speed." "When did you talk to Brittany about my interview, Mom?" I asked. "Oh, we just chat, you know." The pattern was forming. It was like a watermark on a piece of paper. You can only see it when you hold it up to the light at exactly the right angle. Brittany hadn't wanted me at that agency because she was afraid I would expose her lie. She had told my mother to keep me small, to discourage me, and to give me that ridiculous suit so I would bomb the interview. They were working together to ensure that I never walked through the doors that Brittany had already claimed. I met Megan again the next day. I needed more. "How long has she been telling that story?" I asked. Megan sighed. "Since the beginning, Lauren. Donna Hale is big on authentic stories. She loves people who have overcome adversity. Brittany turned her hardship into her entire identity at the firm. She even gave a company-wide talk about it last year. She got a standing ovation." "And no one questioned it?" "Why would they?" Megan asked. "She's successful, she's polished, and she has the proof of her struggle, or so everyone thought." "What happened the day of my interview?" I asked. Megan leaned in. "Right after you left, Brittany went into Donna's office and shut the door. She was there for 20 minutes. She looked rattled. When she came out, she wouldn't talk to anyone." The email from Donna's assistant arrived 2 days later. "Ms. Hale would like to meet with you. This is not regarding your application." I walked into Ridgewell for the second time. I was wearing Donna's blazer. When I entered her office, she wasn't sitting behind her desk. She was standing by the window. On her table was a folder labeled Mataff B. "Tell me about your life, Lauren," she said. It wasn't a request for a resume. It was a deposition, so I told her. I told her about the community college. I told her about the $30,000 guest suite. I told her about the cracked iPad and the 2 in the morning tutorials. I told her about the suit and the TM initials in the collar. I showed her my enrollment records from the registrar. I showed her my bank statements showing the money I had sent home to my parents. Donna listened in absolute silence. When I finished, she picked up the folder on her desk. "Your sister has been with this company for 4 years," she said. "I promoted her twice. I gave her a raise last year specifically because I believed she was a person of immense resilience who had supported her family through poverty. When you walked into that interview in a suit held together by safety pins, I saw the person Brittany had described being. But I also knew that Brittany herself looks nothing like that person." Donna looked me in the eye. "When I said I knew who put you in that suit, I wasn't talking about your parents, Lauren. I was talking about Brittany. I saw her face when she saw you in the lobby. She looked like she had seen a ghost. I didn't confront Brittany immediately. I needed to see the mechanism of her lie one last time. I invited her to coffee. We sat in a busy cafe. I chose a table in the center, nowhere to hide. "What exactly do you tell people at work about our childhood, Brittany?" I asked. She didn't even flinch. She just smiled that perfect, practiced smile. "Oh, Lauren, you know how corporate bios are. They want a narrative. I just framed things in a way that sounds professional. I was protecting us." "Protecting us? Or stealing my life?" I asked. "You told them you went to community college. You told them you were the one who struggled." Brittany's eyes shifted. Then the tears started. Not real tears. The careful, single-drop tears she had used since she was 6 to get out of trouble. "I can't believe you'd be so jealous of my success that you'd attack me like this," she sobbed. "I didn't tell you I worked there because I wanted you to win on your own merits. I was looking out for you." I looked at her and I finally saw it. The mechanism. She wasn't a sister. She was a parasite. She had taken the only thing I had, my story, and turned it into her profit. And when she was caught, she turned herself into the victim. I didn't say another word. I just got up and left. That Sunday, I went to my parents' house for the last time. My mother was in the backyard. Her phone was on the counter. I opened it. I scrolled to the messages between her and Brittany. "She applied to my company, Mom. Don't let her buy a new suit. Let her wear the old one. She'll bomb the interview and stop dreaming. Trust me." "Mom, okay, I'll handle it. Keep telling her she doesn't have the discipline for full time. She's listening to you. I don't want her here." "Already on it." I took the screenshots. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt nothing but a cold, hard resolve. I sat through dinner. I watched my mother serve the food. I watched my father eat in silence. I thought about the words they had planted in my head like weeds. Not enough. Don't deserve. No discipline. They weren't my thoughts. They were an assembly line of cruelty manufactured by my sister and delivered by my mother. I left without saying goodbye. Monday morning. Conference room B. The walls were glass, and the entire agency could see in. I sat on one side of the table with Donna and the HR director. Brittany walked in, looking confident, until she saw me. "Have a seat," Donna said. Brittany tried her usual tactic. She launched into a monologue about how I was unstable and jealous. She talked about how much she loved me and how hard it was to have a sister who constantly tried to ruin her career. She actually cried. Donna waited until she was finished. Then she opened the folder. "Brittany, we called the registrar. There is no record of you at the community college you listed in your performance reviews. There is, however, a full record for Lauren. We also have these." Donna turned her laptop toward Brittany. The screenshots of the text messages filled the screen. "Don't let her buy a new suit. She'll bomb the interview and stop dreaming." Donna hit the speaker on the conference phone. She dialed my mother. "Tammy, this is Donna Hale. I have one question. Did Brittany ask you to sabotage Lauren's interview by giving her an old suit?" There was a long, terrible silence. We could hear my mother's ragged breathing. "Yes," she whispered finally. "Yes, she did." Brittany stood up so fast her chair hit the glass wall behind her. The sound echoed through the entire open office. "This is a violation," she screamed. "She went through Mom's phone. You're choosing her over me?" "I'm choosing the truth, Brittany," Donna said. "You stole your sister's life to build a career. You are terminated, effective immediately. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your things." The entire office watched as Brittany Mataff, the resilient star of the strategy team, walked out of the building. She didn't look like a winner anymore. She looked exactly like what she was, a fraud. My mother called me that night, her voice full of indignation. "How could you do this to your family? Brittany lost everything. You went through my phone." "I didn't do anything to her, Mom," I said. "I just told the truth. You gave me a suit from 30 years ago and told me I didn't deserve anything new. You told me it was Brittany's. It was a lie. Everything in that house was a lie." "Just let it go, Lauren," my father's voice said in the background. "Family lets things go." "No," I said. "I'm not letting it go. I'm letting you go. Don't call me again until you're ready to speak the truth." I hung up. I set the phone down. The following week, the rest of the cards fell. HR discovered that Brittany had also been claiming our parents as dependents on her taxes for 3 years to get a higher deduction. Another layer of fraud built on the same lie of supporting the family. Her social media went dark. Her reputation in the Portland design scene was incinerated overnight. My first day at Ridgewell was a Monday. I didn't wear Donna's blazer, though I still have it. I wore a suit I bought for myself. It wasn't the most expensive one in the store, but it was mine. It fit perfectly. I sat at my new desk by the window. I looked out at the city. For the first time in 26 years, the voice in my head was my own. I wasn't the burden. I wasn't the failure. I was the architect of my own life. They gave me a suit that didn't fit and told me it was all I deserved. But they were wrong. The suit was never the problem. The problem was a family that needed me to stay small so they could feel big. I don't wear hand-me-downs anymore. Not the clothes, not the stories, and certainly not the lies. The next time someone tells you that you don't deserve something new, look them in the eye and remember, the only person who gets to decide your worth is the one looking back at you in the mirror. And for the first time in my life, I finally like what I see.